Harold Brennan hadn't meant to become the kind of man who walks past a crying child. There was a time when he would have stopped, when his heart still bent toward people instead of away from them. But that was before the lawsuits, before the so-called friends who only wanted his money, before his own daughter stopped returning his calls. Now at 68, with more wealth than he could spend in 3 lifetimes, Harold had learned that kindness was just another word for being used. The little boy couldn't have been more than 7, standing outside the grocery store with tears streaming down his freckled face. "Please, mister," the child had said, tugging at Harold's sleeve. "I need help." "My mom." But Harold had pulled away, the boy's small hand slipping off his expensive coat. He'd kept walking, ignoring the pleading voice behind him. He'd heard it all before. "Where are you watching from tonight?" Harold's mansion sat on 5 acres in the hills outside Richmond, Virginia, a monument to success that felt more like a museum than a home. He'd built his fortune in commercial real estate, turning rundown properties into gleaming office buildings, and he'd done it all himself. Started with nothing but a high school diploma and a willingness to outwork anyone. 50 years later, he had everything money could buy and nothing money couldn't. The house echoed as he set his groceries on the marble kitchen counter. It had been 3 months since Maria, his housekeeper of 15 years, retired. He hadn't hired anyone new. Couldn't stand the thought of another person in his space, someone else with their hand out, expecting something. He'd learned to do his own shopping, his own cooking. It wasn't much different than when he was young, really, before all this. His phone sat silent on the counter. Saturday afternoon and not a single call. His daughter Emma lived 2 states away with a family he'd only met twice. She'd married a teacher, of all things, someone who made $35,000 a year and thought that was acceptable. Harold had offered to set them up with a business, give them a real start, but Emma had refused. Said she didn't want his money, said he'd never learned that some things couldn't be bought. That had been 4 years ago. The memory still stung like a fresh wound. Harold unpacked his groceries with methodical precision, the same brands he'd bought for decades. As he reached for the cabinet, his reflection caught in the window glass stopped him. When had he gotten so old? The man looking back had his father's stern mouth, the same deep lines that came from years of frowning. He remembered how his father used to say trust was for fools, that the world would take everything if you let it. Harold had proven him right 100 times over. The incident at the store kept nagging at him, though. The boy's face red and desperate, the way his voice had cracked when Harold walked away. It reminded him of something, some distant echo he couldn't quite place. He shook his head, annoyed at himself. The kid was probably part of some scheme. Parents sent their children out to tug at heartstrings, collect cash from soft-hearted strangers. He'd seen it a dozen times, read about it in the news. He was pouring himself an afternoon coffee when he heard the car. The crunch of tires on his gravel driveway made him glance toward the window. Harold frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. Didn't have visitors anymore, hadn't in years. The few people who used to come around had gotten the message eventually. Through the tall windows flanking his front door, he saw the black and white police cruiser pull to a stop. 2 officers got out, a younger man and a woman maybe in her 40s, both wearing serious expressions. Harold's chest tightened. In his experience, police at your door meant one of 2 things. Someone was dead, or someone was accusing you of something. He opened the door before they knocked, keeping his expression neutral. Years of business negotiations had taught him never to show uncertainty. "Mr. Brennan?" the female officer asked. Her nameplate read Martinez. "Harold Brennan?" "That's right." His voice came out steady, controlled. "Is there a problem?" Officer Martinez exchanged a glance with her partner. "May we come in, sir? We need to ask you some questions about an incident that occurred approximately 40 minutes ago at Morrison's Market." Harold's mind raced. The store, the crying child. What had he done wrong? He hadn't touched the boy, hadn't done anything except walk away. Was that illegal now? Could someone be arrested for not helping? "Of course," he heard himself say, stepping aside. His hand trembled slightly as he gestured them into his foyer. The younger officer, name tag reading Chen, was looking around at the expensive artwork on the walls, the crystal chandelier, taking it all in with an unreadable expression. They stood in his living room, and Harold noticed neither officer sat when he gestured to the chairs. They remained standing, and somehow that felt worse, like they were ready to move quickly if needed, like he might be dangerous. "Mr. Brennan," Officer Martinez began, pulling out a small notebook. "Were you at Morrison's Market this afternoon around 2:15? "Yes." There was no point in denying it. "And did you have an interaction with a young boy?" 7 years old, red hair, blue jacket." Harold's throat felt dry. "A child approached me. Asked for help. I didn't stop." He raised his chin slightly. "I'm not required to stop for every person who asks me for money." "Money?" Officer Chen spoke for the first time. "Sir, the child wasn't asking for money." Harold's certainty wavered. He was crying, tugging on my coat. "People do that. They use their children to what, Mr. Brennan?" Officer Martinez's voice was gentle but firm. She looked at him with something that might have been disappointment. "That little boy was trying to tell you his mother had collapsed inside the store. She had a seizure near the pharmacy section. He ran outside looking for help because his mother had told him if she ever got sick to find a grown-up, to get help fast." The words hit Harold like cold water. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "The boy saw you," Officer Chen continued, his young face hard now. "Saw a well-dressed man, someone who looked important, capable, someone who could help. He ran up to you, tried to tell you his mom needed help, and you brushed him off." Harold's legs felt weak. He sank onto the arm of his leather sofa, his carefully constructed defense crumbling. I didn't let him finish. You thought he was scamming you." Officer Martinez wasn't asking. She was stating a fact. "The store manager told us you walked right past, didn't even look back." The memory replayed in Harold's mind, but different now. The boy's face, those tears that had seemed performative, they'd been real. The desperation in his voice when he'd said, "my mom," and Harold had pulled away, assuming he'd heard that line before. Oh God, what had he done? "Is she—" Harold couldn't finish the question. His hands were shaking now, no hiding it. "The mother is alive," Officer Martinez said, and Harold felt a rush of relief so intense it made him dizzy. Fortunately, another customer saw her collapse and called 911. She's at Richmond General. The seizure was controlled and she's stable. But Mr. Brennan, those minutes matter. Seconds matter when someone's having a medical emergency. Her son's name is Danny," Officer Chen added. His voice was quieter now, but each word landed like a stone. "He's 7 years old. He did exactly what his mother taught him, tried to get help from an adult. And the first adult he found turned his back." Harold pressed his palms against his eyes. He wanted to explain, to make them understand the context of his life, the endless parade of people who'd wanted something from him. But the excuses turned to ash in his throat. Because there was a mother in the hospital. There was a 7-year-old boy who'd trusted him, and he'd failed. It was that simple and that devastating. Are you here to arrest me?" His voice came out hoarse. The two officers looked at each other. "No, sir," Martinez said finally. "You didn't break any law. There's no legal obligation to help a stranger in Virginia. We're here because after his mother was taken by ambulance, Danny told the store manager what happened. Described you. The manager knows you, said you're a regular. She gave us your name and address. We're here," Chen said, and now his voice carried something else, something that sounded almost sad. "Because that little boy wanted us to check on you." He was worried. He said maybe you didn't hear him right, or maybe you were having a bad day. He wanted us to make sure you were okay. The words broke something inside Harold that had been frozen for a very long time. His breath came out in a shudder. The child had been worried about him. The child whose mother lay in a hospital, whose terror Harold had dismissed as theater, was concerned about the man who'd abandoned him. "He asked if we could tell you," Martinez said gently, reading from her notes, "that it's okay, that his mom says everybody has hard days. He wanted you to know she's going to be fine." Harold's vision blurred. He hadn't cried in 30 years, not since his own mother's funeral, but now tears ran hot down his weathered face, and he didn't try to stop them. He thought of Emma, of the grandchildren he barely knew, of all the years he'd spent protecting himself from being hurt and ending up completely alone. If this moment has touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. What hospital? Harold's voice was barely a whisper. Richmond General, you said? Yes, but what's her name? The mother. What's her name? Officer Martinez hesitated. Then, perhaps seeing something in Harold's face that convinced her, she checked her notes. Sarah Winters. She's in the ICU, but they expect she'll be moved to a regular room by tonight. She's going to make a full recovery. Harold stood, his legs steadier now, purpose flooding through him like light through a dark room. And the boy, Danny? Where is he now? He's with his mother. They wouldn't let him ride in the ambulance. But a store employee drove him to the hospital. Mr. Brennan? Visiting hours? I'm not visiting, Harold interrupted. And for the first time in years, his voice carried something besides suspicion or weariness. I'm going to do what I should have done the first time that child asked for help. I'm going to show up. The officers watched as he grabbed his coat and keys. At the door, Harold paused and turned back to them. Thank you, he said, for coming here. For telling me, Officer Chen nodded slowly. Mr. Brennan? That boy's message. He really did want us to check if you were okay. Maybe remember that. As Harold drove toward the hospital, his hands tight on the steering wheel, he couldn't stop thinking about what kind of child worries about a stranger who failed him. The hospital's fluorescent lights felt harsh after the autumn evening outside. Harold hadn't been inside a hospital since his father died, 12 years ago in a place that looked and smelled just like this. Antiseptic and fear and something else, something he couldn't name. He'd held his father's hand at the end, and the old man's last words had been, "Don't let them take advantage." Even dying, his father had been warning him about the world. Harold stopped at the information desk, suddenly uncertain. What was he doing here? He was a stranger to these people. Worse than a stranger, he was the man who'd failed them when they needed help. What right did he have to show up now? But he thought of Danny's message, of a 7-year-old's faith that people were fundamentally good, just having hard days. And he moved forward. I'm here to see Sarah Winters, he told the volunteer at the desk. She was brought in this afternoon. Are you family? Harold hesitated. No, I'm someone who should have helped her son. The volunteer, an older woman with kind eyes, studied him for a moment. Something in his face must have convinced her because she picked up the phone. After a brief conversation, she hung up and smiled softly. Room 412, 4th floor. But sir, the little boy is there. He's been through a lot today. I know, Harold said. That's why I'm here. The elevator ride felt endless. What would he say? How did you apologize for something like this? All his business skills, his decades of negotiations and careful words, felt useless now. This required something he'd forgotten how to do. Be honest. Be vulnerable. Room 412's door was partially open. Harold raised his hand to knock, then heard voices inside. A woman's voice, weak but warm, and a child's higher pitch responding. But Mom, what if it happens again? What if I can't find help next time? Danny, sweetheart, today was scary. But you did everything right. You were so brave. I tried to get that man to help. The one with the nice coat. But he just walked away. The boy's voice cracked. Was it something I said? Did I do it wrong? Harold felt like he'd been punched. He'd done this. He'd made this child doubt himself. No, baby, no. Listen to me. Sarah's voice was firmer now. You did nothing wrong. That man he probably didn't understand. Sometimes grown-ups are dealing with their own problems, and it makes them forget how to see other people's needs. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means he was having a hard day. That's what I told the police, Danny said. I told them to check if he's okay. Through the crack in the door, Harold could see part of the room. A small figure sitting in a chair beside the bed, swinging his legs. Those same sneakers he'd seen outside the store, now scuffed and dirty. He knocked softly. The room went quiet. Then, come in. Harold pushed the door open and stepped inside. Sarah Winters was in her mid-30s with Danny's same red hair, though hers was matted from the hospital pillow. She looked exhausted, with an IV in her arm and monitors beeping softly beside her. But her eyes were alert, intelligent, taking him in. Danny sat up straight in his chair. Recognition flickered across his young face, followed by confusion. You're the man. From the store. I am. Harold's voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. My name is Harold Brennan, and I came here to apologize. Sarah's hand moved to her son's shoulder, protective. You're the one Danny tried to ask for help. Yes. Harold stepped closer, then stopped, not wanting to crowd them. I didn't let him finish. I thought... He looked at Danny, at those freckled cheeks still blotchy from crying. I thought you wanted money. I thought it was a trick. And I was wrong. So completely wrong. Have you ever misjudged someone and realized too late what you'd done? Let us know in the comments. I don't need money, Danny said, his voice small but certain. I just needed help for my mom. I know that now. The police told me. But by then, someone else had already helped, thank God. Someone better than me. Harold's hands twisted together. I don't have a good excuse. Danny, I've spent a lot of years being suspicious of people, thinking everyone wanted something from me. And it made me blind. It made me walk past a little boy who needed help. Sarah was watching him carefully. You came all the way here to tell us this. I came to apologize. And to ask if there's anything I can do now. Anything at all. Medical bills, anything you need. I know it doesn't make up for what I didn't do, but... Mr. Brennan. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. I appreciate you coming. That takes courage. But we're okay. I have insurance through my job. Danny and I will be fine, Harold nodded, feeling both relief and a strange sense of loss. He'd expected anger, recrimination. Instead, he was receiving grace he didn't deserve. I understand. I needed you to know how sorry I am. Mr. Brennan? Danny's voice was tentative. Are you okay? You look really sad. The question, the same compassion that had sent police to check on him, made Harold's throat tighten. This child, who had every reason to hate him, was worried about his feelings. What kind of mother raised a boy like this? I'm sad that I let you down, Harold admitted, speaking directly to Danny as if the boy were an adult, because in some ways this 7-year-old understood things Harold had forgotten. I'm sad that I forgot how to trust people. How to be kind first and ask questions later. Sarah shifted in her bed, wincing slightly. Danny, could you go get Mom some water from the fountain down the hall? Take your time. Danny looked between them, then nodded. As he passed Harold, he paused. It's okay to have bad days, Mr. Brennan. My mom says everybody does. Then he was gone, his small footsteps padding down the hallway. Alone with Sarah, Harold felt exposed. She gestured to the chair her son had vacated. Please, sit. He sat, perching on the edge like he might need to run. Danny's father left when he was 2, Sarah said quietly. Just walked out one day. Decided being a parent was too hard. For a long time, I was angry, bitter, worried Danny would grow up thinking that was normal. Thinking people just leave. Harold listened. Sensing she was going somewhere with this, so I taught him something different. I taught him that people are basically good. That when someone acts badly, it's usually because they're hurting, not because there's something wrong with you. I taught him to lead with kindness. She looked directly at Harold. And today when you walked away, it was the first time that belief was really tested for him. The weight of that settled on Harold's shoulders. But you know what? Sarah's tired face softened into something like a smile. He passed the test. Even after you left, even while he was terrified about me, he held on to that belief. He told the police you must be having a hard day. He wanted them to check on you. I don't deserve that kind of grace, Harold whispered. Maybe not, Sarah said frankly. But that's the thing about grace, isn't it? It's not about deserving. It's about choosing to see people as more than their worst moments. Harold thought about his daughter Emma, about the last conversation they'd had. She'd said almost the same thing. You only see the worst in people, Dad. You've become so hard. He'd told her she was naive, that the world would teach her better. But sitting here, looking at Sarah, a single mother with epilepsy, working a job with good insurance, raising a son who believed in kindness, he wondered who'd actually learned the right lessons. My daughter doesn't speak to me anymore, he found himself saying. I have 2 grandchildren I barely know. I spent so many years protecting my money, protecting myself, that I woke up one day completely alone. Sarah nodded slowly. And today, when a child asked you for help, all those years of protection kicked in. Yes. Mr. Brennan, can I tell you something? He nodded. Danny won't remember this as the day a man refused to help him. He'll remember it as the day he learned to keep asking until someone says yes. And he'll remember that the man came back to apologize. That's powerful for a child. knowing that adults can recognize their mistakes and try to make them right. The door opened and Danny returned, carefully carrying a small plastic cup of water. He handed it to his mother, then looked at Harold. "Are you still sad?" Harold considered the question seriously. "I'm getting less sad. Talking to your mom is helping." Danny climbed back into his chair, sneakers dangling. "My mom's really smart. She helps me feel better when I'm sad, too." Sarah laughed softly, then winced again. "Okay, that hurts." Note to self, no laughing with bruised ribs. "You fell pretty hard," Harold said. Then hesitantly, "The police said you're going to be okay. They're keeping me overnight for observation, but yes. It was a seizure, not a stroke or anything worse. I have epilepsy. Usually well controlled with medication, but sometimes they happen anyway." She glanced at Danny with clear affection. "This brave kid has seen them before. He knows the drill. Mom taught me," Danny said proudly. "If she starts acting funny, I should stay calm and get help." Today was the first time it happened when we weren't at home. If you've been moved by this story of second chances, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Harold looked at this small family, mother and son, facing challenges he'd never had to imagine, doing it with grace and courage and kindness. They had so little compared to his wealth, and yet they were infinitely richer in the things that mattered. "Sarah," he said slowly, an idea forming. "What do you do for work?" She looked surprised by the question. "I'm an accountant. Small firm downtown, why?" "And Danny, you're in second grade?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. "I like math and reading. And art. I'm really good at drawing dinosaurs." Harold smiled, actually smiled, something that felt strange on his face. "I'd like to see those drawings someday." The next 3 months changed Harold's life in ways he couldn't have predicted. It started small. He visited the hospital the next day with a sketchbook and colored pencils for Danny, the good kind from an art store, not the cheap waxy ones. The boy's face had lit up with pure joy, and that expression had haunted Harold in the best possible way. Then Sarah came home from the hospital, and Harold asked if he could take Danny to the park one Saturday while she rested. Sarah had hesitated, understandably cautious, but something in Harold's face must have convinced her. They'd gone to the park, and Danny had shown him how to pump his legs on the swings to go higher. Harold, who hadn't been to a playground in 40 years, found himself laughing as the autumn wind rushed past them. He learned that Sarah's firm was struggling, that her boss was decent, but the economy was tight. Harold made some calls. Didn't throw money at the problem. He'd learned that wasn't the answer. Instead, he connected the firm with some of his business contacts who needed accounting services. Fair work for fair pay. Sarah's boss gave her a raise 2 months later, purely on merit. He learned that Danny loved dinosaurs, but also that he'd never been to the Natural History Museum because Sarah's weekends were spent catching up on sleep and housework. Harold offered to take him. They went on a Sunday, and Danny's running commentary on every fossil made Harold realize how much he'd missed. Not just museums, but wonder. The ability to be amazed by the world. On Thanksgiving, Harold invited them to his house. It was the first time in 5 years anyone had sat at his long dining table. Sarah brought a sweet potato casserole, and Danny drew place cards for everyone. Harold had hired a chef to prepare the meal. He wasn't that domestically skilled yet, but the 3 of them ate together, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, the house felt like a home. "I talked to Emma," Harold admitted over dessert, while Danny was in the other room playing with the old train set Harold had found in his attic. His own childhood toy, saved all these years. "My daughter." I called her. Sarah looked up, interested. "How did it go?" "Not great at first." She was suspicious. "Wanted to know what I wanted." He smiled ruefully. "Can't blame her. But I told her about you two. About what happened. And I told her she was right all along. That I had become hard. That I was trying to be different. And she's thinking about bringing the kids for Christmas. Just thinking about it. But that's more than I've gotten in 4 years." His eyes were damp. I told her I wanted to try. To be the kind of grandfather Danny made me realize I could be. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Second chances, Harold. That's what life is about." Christmas came, and Emma did visit with her 2 children, a daughter Danny's age and a younger boy. Harold was nervous, hands shaking as he opened the door, but Emma looked at him with cautious hope. They didn't fix everything in one visit. Some hurts took time, but they talked, really talked, and Emma saw him playing with Danny and her own children, saw the sketchbooks and train sets, and the genuine smile on her father's face. "Who are you, and what did you do with my dad?" she'd asked, half joking. "I met someone who reminded me who I used to be," he'd answered, before I forgot. By spring, Harold had made changes, real ones. He'd started volunteering at the children's hospital, reading stories to kids in the ICU. He'd hired Maria back, not as a housekeeper but as a companion, someone to share meals with, to talk to. He'd joined a community group that helped single parents with home repairs and childcare connections, and he'd set up a trust fund for Danny's education. But he'd done it carefully, with Sarah's full knowledge and consent. Not as charity, but as an investment in the kind of person Danny already was, someone who would use opportunity to make the world better. "You didn't have to do this," Sarah had said when he explained the trust. "I know. That's why I wanted to. Not out of guilt anymore, but out of love." The word had felt strange in his mouth at first, but it was true. He loved this little family who'd taught him how to be human again. One Saturday afternoon in May, Harold and Danny were drawing together at Harold's kitchen table. Danny was working on a complex scene of a T-Rex family, and Harold was attempting a landscape that looked more like a child's scribble. But Danny had assured him it was really good for a beginner. "Mr. Brennan?" Danny asked, not looking up from his drawing. "Remember when I tried to get help at the store?" Harold's hand paused. "I do. Every day. I'm glad you walked away." Harold looked up, startled. "What?" "Because if you'd helped right away, you would have just called 911 and left. But because you didn't, you felt bad. And then you came to the hospital, and then you became my friend." Danny looked up, his young face serious. "Sometimes the best things come from mistakes. That's what my mom says." Harold set down his pencil, feeling that familiar tightness in his throat that came so often now. But unlike before, these tears were warm, not cold. They were about connection, not isolation. "Your mom is the smartest person I know," Harold said. "And you're the wisest. Thank you, Danny, for giving an old man a second chance." "You're not old," Danny said matter-of-factly. "You're just getting started." And as spring sunshine streamed through the windows, as the house echoed with laughter instead of silence, Harold realized the boy was right. At 68, after spending decades building walls, he was finally learning how to build bridges. He was finally learning that the richest people weren't those with the most money, but those with the most love. If you enjoyed this story of redemption and second chances, please remember to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us what truly matters in life. From a cold November afternoon outside a grocery store to warm spring days filled with friendship, Harold had learned the most important lesson of all. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to choose kindness over suspicion, connection over isolation, love over fear. And sometimes the greatest gifts come from the smallest hands, from a 7-year-old boy who taught a millionaire how to be rich in the ways that actually count. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May we all have the courage to recognize our mistakes and the grace to make them right.